Welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Greg, who is the mastermind behind the instrumental post-rock, post-hardcore band secretgardens out of New York. Greg and I talk a lot about his start in music, what got him to the point of him creating secretgardens, the very in-depth concept he has had over the past several records and releases that he's done, and the final one coalescing with a new record coming out in autumn, covering the last four releases he's had, covering all four seasons in a different way. That's really interesting. We talk about everything from his musicianship to the kind of difference between the upcoming record and the ones that he has released in the past. And as well as his, ongoing relationship with members of A Lot Like Birds, how he became, the live touring guitarist for A Lot Like Birds for their reunion shows and their live shows recently over the past several months, and everything in between. So I really just hope people enjoy the episode. It was absolutely fantastic to talk to Greg. As of this recording, and when this comes out, this will be right up until the start of secretgardens' upcoming about 2-week tour. So the notes will have all the details for that. If anyone's listening from Chicago, which the majority of a plurality of the listeners are from Illinois and from Chicago, definitely go check out the show at the Subterranean this Saturday. I think it's the 15th. And go support secretgardens along with a lot of great bands at the various locations that secretgardens is playing during their tour. And I just really hope people enjoy this episode. It was a great one to do. And I appreciate that Greg came on. This is the first one that I kind of did as a trial run without really publicizing it too much, that was live streamed as well. So make sure you go follow on Twitch, twitch.tv/thepowerlesspod. Follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I think that's it. At the Powerless Pod, as well as YouTube at the Powerless Pod. Find all the different things there, whether you want to watch video versions of the podcast, whether you want to interact with me on social media, whether you want to tell me how much of a piece of shit I am, whatever the case may be. Definitely check out all of those things. And also, if you're really interested in supporting the podcast, reach out and connect on the Linktree at all the socials. You can find the Patreon, where you can support for just $2.50 a month. Recently, for those that have been supporting over the past several months, I've started to send out t-shirts for people that have been supporting. You can also buy those t-shirts on the merch store that is also in the Linktree. But yeah, if you enjoy the podcast at any level, make sure to check those things out and see if there's a way you can support to keep things going as I try to upgrade the show slowly over the next several months. And again, I just really hope you enjoy the episode. Before we get into the episode, the last thing that I'm going to go over here, I'm going to do this a little bit differently this time because as we know, as a lot of people know, in a lot of the intros, I give out the numbers of what's been going on and the current genocide going on in Gaza. And the escalation of violence from the Israeli government against Palestinians, both in Gaza and the West Bank, which the West Bank, again, is not controlled by Hamas, is not affiliated with militant resistance organization that Hamas is, and yet there is still ongoing violence, murder, ethnic cleansing, forced displacement, all those different horrific things. We just saw a refugee camp hit in which potentially hundreds of people have been murdered and brutalized by the IDF in a blatant war crime. So I'm not going to share the numbers here. You can look those up. It's just a reminder that these are people. These are not just numbers. These are not just statistics. These are human beings, children, men, women, civilians that are just trying to live their lives. If you go on social media and follow people that are living within Gaza, you can just see the beauty of the culture and the beauty of their resilience despite everything that is happening to them. And so I just really encourage people to call your representatives, whether you're in the UK, Canada, the United States, any other Western country that is supporting Israel and its onslaught in Gaza. We know that the UN just essentially put them on a blacklist for their war crimes and have called for a ceasefire that Israel continues to push away from, to not support, as they continue to be absolutely brutal in their bombing campaigns and murder of civilians. So make sure to go to websites, whether it's Ceasefire Today, where you can find a lot of links to support Palestinians, whether you go to the PCRF Foundation and support there, whether you go to Gaza Strong, there's another website that you can find links from. Search Palestinian support and you will find somewhere to support. But the main thing people need to start doing is applying pressure, both in phone calls and protests, and making elected officials and people in power who are supporting this make their lives hell. So that way pressure is applied, so things are finally going in the right direction. We've seen great, historic protests for these people's lives, and I think it needs to continue and it needs to escalate because the violence is escalating, so the pressure needs to escalate. So again, go to all those links. Those links will be at the very top of every note for the podcast and also on YouTube. Please go there and support and just take a few minutes out of your day to do so. It does not take much. You do not even need to spend money in order to apply your pressure and make your voice heard to the people that are supposedly supporting your interests in your government. So again, after that, we'll get into the episode with Greg from Secret Gardens on the Powerless Podcast. All right. I am here for the next episode of the Powerless Podcast with Greg from the instrumental, what I would call like post-hardcore, post-rock band Secret Gardens, which is an absolutely fantastic music project. Before we get going on everything, just how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for putting up with a few reschedules with unannounced construction in my building and all that good stuff. So I appreciate your flexibility.
Yeah, it's all good. I have construction going outside of my place too. It's annoying as fuck.
Yeah, and for me, it was like I got home from work and I saw that, and it was literally like no warning. There was no note put on the doors. There was no like anything, and just like couldn't even park in my own driveway for several days and still can't. But at least the construction's done and we can get recording on this. So again, just appreciate the flexibility as always. It's always
dude, no problem.
Rough when I have to reschedule and stuff. What I thought we would do today is dive into, obviously you're a pretty prolific musician. Really, really love the material you've put out through Secret Gardens. Also thought it was super cool when I first found out about you that you had a song with Idola, which was like, I was blown away when I saw that. That's kind of really, really, again, like a great song, and also kind of steps away from the primarily instrumental aspect of the band for one song, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we get into all that, get into what started you on this path of music and also starting Secret Gardens. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about how the whole touring live guitarist for a lot like Birds came about, because that's pretty wild. So I don't know, you just awesome, have like a really interesting music trajectory, and I know we talked a little bit that you started as a fan of the band long before and got to do that, so that's just like a really cool thing to kind of dive into. So we'll get into all that and what's coming up with the band. I know you got a tour and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just thought we'd kind of dive into all those different things. Before we get started with all of that, though, one question I ask everybody to kind of get things going, see where you're at, like music headspace wise, with just current influences or bands you enjoy. What have you been listening to a lot lately? What would be like on repeat for Spotify, so to speak, and things of that nature?
Lately. Okay, let's check. Yesterday, I listened through the Bring Me the Horizon recent album for the first time, which was really good. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of Childish Gambino in anticipation, because he re-put out that album from 4 years ago, or finished it. And he's putting out a new record this summer, he said. And going into that, always listening to a lot of Pliny. Recently, my girlfriend showed me Chapel Roan, and she's really cool. We're listening to that recently. Other than that, kind of like the Casey Musgraves album that came out. I'm just looking at my Spotify now. The one that came out a couple months ago was really good. I love that. And I saw Sleep Token recently, so I was like, fuck, this record's so good. I got to go listen again. And I would say that would be the majority of the recent listenings.
I mean, that's a lot of good material over, a lot of different subgenres and things of that nature. That's cool that you got to see Sleep Token. I'm exceedingly jealous. I really, really enjoy that band. Their second record is what really, really got me into them. And then of course, like, Take Me Back to Eden, you're just like, this is just like, I don't know, like a clinic in songwriting, and also how they just like promote everything and all that. It's just so cool. But what did you think of I actually just listened to that this morning myself for the first time. I'm always behind on releases. What'd you think of the new Bring Me the Horizon record? People are like all over the place and what they think about that thing, you know?
I was just talking to my girlfriend about this yesterday, actually. So I like it. There's some moments for sure where they are doing shit I have never heard them do, which is they do so much different shit, which is always an impressive feat. So I liked those songs a lot more. There were a few songs that sort of felt in the context of what they've put out already, sort of like formulaic, but
Mm-hmm.
I really like Posthuman Survival Horror, the one that came out in 2021. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
my favorite record front to back of theirs as
Mm-hmm.
as a piece of art that they've put out. Amo is really good, and so is That's the Spirit, and like so is the one with Chelsea
Sempiternal.
Smile on it.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Suicide Season. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
I like that record too. But yeah, Posthuman Survival Horror was like a really good combination of like their new pop sensibility and there's like their hardcore, post-hardcore, metalcore roots.
yeah.
And then this one felt like it is a continuation, I guess, right? Because it's also called Posthuman.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I guess, touched on a lot of the same stuff, so it didn't feel as fresh to me. But there was some standout like tracks that I was like, "Oh shit! Oh, that's cool. I've never heard them do something like that." And obviously, the production's fucking crazy, so it's like
Right.
altogether really impressive. I'd have to listen back again. I might find it more impressive when I do so. But I mean, like all in all, it's like an impressive feat and like really fucking time intensive and hard to make that kind of music. I know exactly like what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even there's a little bit I don't know about, but like as a person who's like slaving over their own record currently at the moment, I'm just like thinking about how much processing went into making their crazy ass production. It's nuts. So it is a
It really
feat,
is.
and it is a feat in that respect. But I don't know. I would have liked it more if it came out closer to and felt more like a real double album. But the fact that
Right.
they're 4 years apart makes me sort of feel like that was like maybe keeping that song on the record was a little too formulaic. But I don't know. That's only my first impression of it.
Yeah. Same. I mean, I've heard like a couple of the singles from I had heard a couple of singles from the record. I stopped, after a certain point with a lot of bands that when they get to like single 5 of a record and I know the record's coming out, I kind of stop listening to them because I don't want to.
Same.
Nothing against releasing a ton. I get why you have to do that in this day and age for a lot of bands, or like that's how they market. But it's like I just don't want to hear half the record out of sync before I really dive into it. But I feel the same way. Like the survival horror one, I think it was like the first record they did where it really kind of felt like, and it kind of feels like it kind of felt like the kicking off point for a lot of more modern bands where you really are like, yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can feature baby metal and then you can go, do like a more like emo rock song. You can do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then feature like some of the heaviest, music they've done while also kind of like you brought up Ammo, bringing in some of that stuff that they clearly are influenced by. That's why I always enjoy that band's releases, even though like I would agree this new one, again, I same boat. Like I have to listen to it more and not compare it and not have the hype, in my head when I'm listening to it. But like it's definitely not my favorite of theirs, but they can't really do wrong in my opinion. Like they're just so all over the place and know so much of what they're doing from like a songwriting and production standpoint that it's like even if there's a certain song I don't necessarily love, it's like I'm just blown away as an amateur musician at how the hell they put all that together so well.
Yeah,
Um
I mean they've always been an impressive group, uh, like through and through. But yeah,
mhm.
I mean I'll give it another listen for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thanks for going over that. I always like to do that just to kind of see what people are listening to. And most of the time, it reminds me that I need to check out some new records I have fallen off from. So appreciate that. But what I
Hmm.
guess we would start with next is kind of going back as far as you can, before Secret Gardens, before obviously what we talked about with you doing touring with a lot like birds and things of that nature. As far
Hmm.
back as you can go, what first got you started interested in music? Was it like at a young age? You grew up in a musical family? Was it school band? Was it kind of walk me
Yeah,
through like where music first got important for you in your life? I guess as far back as you can go.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I definitely wasn't in a musical family. Like I had some cousins or maybe second cousins or whatever
Hmm.
that were more musical and stuff. And then my brother got a guitar because he kind of got into music. My oldest brother, I'm one of four, and he kind of rubbed off on me at a younger age and started showing me like Green Day, My Chemical Romance. Like I heard of bands like Fall Out Boy and stuff. Kind of went down that like pipeline a bit, and then my mom asked me if I wanted a guitar because there was some like deal on something somewhere. And she asked me if I like before sixth grade, the end of fifth grade into sixth grade that summer, if I wanted a guitar, and I was like, sure, like cool, I'll try it. And I ended up really liking it because I was really connecting with the music that I was listening to. I was definitely listening to a lot of Green Day. They're like my first like favorite band, I'd say.
Hmm.
Um, So, and it was like easier to play their songs because like once you learn a power chord, you basically can play any Green Day song. And I was like, oh
Absolutely.
fuck yeah, like this is sick. And then I just started loving it and loving it. Then I eventually started like learning more difficult music, like some little like lead parts and stuff, and just like branching out from there. I like found other friends who were into music, and my cousin was like really into music who was the same age as me, so we started playing with
Hmm.
each other, and he was a drummer. And yeah, eventually that turned into my first band I was ever in, called Tears to You, which is technically still a band. Actually, we just are like sporadically active and not active because it's just a bunch of
Yeah.
my old friends from high school and my cousin that were all like in the same friend group. So that band is very like touch and go, but it's super fun. It was mostly active until like 2016, and then we all like graduated school and did other stuff with our lives.
Hmm.
Which is all well and good because I actually still see those guys like every week or every other week, and they're still like my best friends. But we just don't do music stuff all the time because they're all, they have other stuff in their lives. We recently kind of finished putting out the last part of our album like back in like February, which you can check out if you want. But that was just kind of like the progress of a few years and like later stages of our 20s and all the songs we were writing during that time.
Right.
Um, and let's see. So in 2016, the other guys, it wasn't really a huge point in contention, but the other guys were less serious about music and doing other stuff. And I still was like, fuck, I still want to do this. I'm like not meant to really do anything else like full time. I'm happy to do other
Hmm.
shit part time uh, to make money and make the full time dream work or, whatever. Even if I don't
Right.
be this gigantic rock star and I end up doing some other career in music, like that is easy to get out of bed and I enjoy it. Like that's fine too. But I was looking to join a band that was more active in 2016. Uh, so I ended up joining one, and it was called Vista. And that band was like started off kind of small, but had like bigger aspirations. It was primarily me and the vocalist Hope, and we got a lot of stuff done, released a few singles, an EP or two, played some pretty good shows, and like really hustled and stuff. And we toured like kind of not nationally, but like out little outside of regionally, like
Yeah.
kind of this half of the country and back and stuff. I'm in New York. I'm on the East Coast, so like we got to like Chicago and then Texas and then some stuff in Florida and back up, and like we did that a couple times and definitely made some fans and whatnot. And uh yeah, I was doing that from like 27 or 2016 to like 2020 basically, grinding on that. And then more or less, long story short, like the pandemic and also just us kind of differentiating creatively and like with personally and creatively, like kind of led to us choosing to just go on an indefinite hiatus and just like put the thing down, because I don't think all of us were really into it anymore, and it like wasn't working out the best. So
Mhm.
that, and then the pandemic. So let's see. So that was 2020, the beginning of that. But in 2018, I had this idea because I started really getting into post rock into like in like 2017, 2016, 2018, slowly finding more bands and realizing like, oh shit, bands sound like this. Like that's fucking sick.
Uh-huh.
Um, really got into the post rock thing later in life, but I still love all the like original shit I grew up with, like the like pop punk emo stuff, and then I started listening to like a lot of mathy stuff pretty young,
Mhm.
like post hardcore stuff, Warped Tour shit. Like I started listening to that pretty young in like my late teens and early 20s. So
Well, I was gonna
oh,
say,
go ahead.
like, not sorry to butt in here for a sec, but from
Go
your
ahead.
music and specifically like the record that your full length you put out in 2022, Everbloom, which is the one what I listened to the most from your releases personally.
Cool.
You can kind of feel that, like you could feel like that's why I said at the beginning, it's like your band like instrumentally feels like a post rock, post hardcore band to me in some ways, because
Kinda,
like
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of elements of I listen to post rock, like naming off like some more niche bands I'd probably struggle with, but I loved like Explosions in the Sky,
Me
Caspian,
too.
bands of those of that kind of realm, and especially when those bands were kind of getting prolific in like the late 2000, in the late 2000s and 2010s, and just absolutely loved that music. And I heard that, but then I'd also hear some of these kind of rhythmic portions that you're like, oh yeah, that'd be on like a an Idola song as an example, or something like that,
Hmm.
mixed in with sort of like the other elements that you'd have of like the like really like vibey delays and reverbs and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense that you kind of have these different eras of you really diving into these kinds of genres, and it coming out in your latest project, which is Secret Gardens, right? So I say
Yeah.
latest; it's been
Thank
around
you.
for a couple of years now, but yeah, it was cool to kind of be able to easily hear all those influences.
Thank you. I'm glad it translates. Yeah, it's weird. Like I, I just always intended Secret Gardens to be to check off a couple boxes, which was like be number one, like my outlet for like whatever I need to get out and like whatever therapeutic like catharsis I want to feel through music that if I end up joining another band or whatever, like I can happily put my own like inject a bit of myself into that. But Secret Gardens
Mm-hmm.
is like what's entirely me and what I'm like. All the songs serve basically like um they serve the purpose of me like putting a soundtrack to a specific moment or time in my life. So um that's been consistent thus far with all these albums I've been putting out. And also the other thing is, I don't know if you picked up on this or if we talked about this or not. I forget who I tell and who I don't. I'm putting out 4 records that sonically represent each season.
Oh, okay.
So
No, I did not. I
yeah,
was not aware. That's awesome.
I don't know if you picked up on it. I don't try to like be like about it, but there might be a
Yeah,
time
of
where I
course.
might be more like in your face about it. But I started off with this concept like I don't know, since before 2019, so 2017, 16, 18, somewhere in there I had the idea to do this, and then Secret Gardens became kind of like my outlet for my personal experiences and things I wanted to write about, whether it was with words or not with words. But also this idea I had, which is largely inspired by the Deer Hunter and their Color Spectrum albums.
Oh yeah.
Um, I wanted to, for a few different reasons, I had this idea, and I can dive into that more in a second. But like, yeah, I wanted to 100% like get this idea or concept album series, if you want to call it that, like done. It became my outlet to do that, and I started making these songs, ironically enough, or like this is kind of on purpose, like in secret while I was still in Vista, because I started
Mhm.
getting more into like this post rock stuff, and I was like, fuck, I could do this. Like, I could have my own little whatever. Like, side project for all these songs that aren't Vista songs or aren't this song or Here's to You or whatever. Like, so I started writing songs for what ended up being the summer release, which was my first EP, which it is going to be a full album eventually. I just have kind of, it was like my first foray into what this project would sound like. So I think I want to reissue the summer record, which is called verão, which is the Portuguese word for summer. I'm Portuguese, so
Okay, very cool.
yeah.
That actually, it's so. I feel really dumb right now because usually I'm good at picking up on these things, albeit it's usually like with bands that have like lyrics that help you like figure out the story or the intent a little more, where like I feel like I'm less adept when it comes to instrumental music with figuring that out. But I did have this feeling when I was listening through your discography this past week, kind of getting ready for this recording all over again, where, you know, it was very intentional with like what am I looking for? Like what the songs are about, you know what I mean? That each release kind of has its own texture to it. That felt very intentional, and it makes more sense when you're explaining it that it, you know, that's this very conceptual thing of seasons. That's awesome. That's really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, man. It's been a fucking crazy task to accomplish. Not gonna lie. Like it's been my life's work so far. Like, to be totally honest, like if I will be happier if I die after all these things come out, because I have put like 5+ years and so much like time, money, and attention into every detail of these records. And the final one comes out this year. It's been fucking crazy to do. It's like an insane experience that I'm glad I embarked on it, because I would have always wondered if, or what if I never did it.
Absolutely. You know, you talked about it here a little bit. Where did, you said you started doing these songs as, you know, your quote unquote side project when you're in your other band to kind of work on this style of music that you were really getting into. But can you get into that a little? Where did if you can get into the weeds a little bit more, if you remember, I know this is going back 5+ years, like you said now, but it's also very intentional. Where did this idea, that your first release is instantly into this concept of 4 records, over several years? That's not how most people, when they start off a project, approach it. Yeah. Usually a band puts out, a couple of singles, and they end up putting those singles into an EP and remastering it. And then maybe their next release is a little more intentional, or whatever the case may be. So
you're so right.
You started yeah, I mean, and when you started this, and from the get-go, I know you said you're going to turn the EP into a full length at a certain point, but like why was it that and I'm sure it helped in some ways, but why was it that you came at the ground running with so much intent on this project that you knew would take quite a while, right?
I honestly, I knew I wanted to do it. I didn't give myself a strict timeline. I only gave myself like a few strict rules with it, which is something that made it easier to tackle. One of the hardcore rules was like, the album of which season it is has to come out in the corresponding season. So like the summer record is going to come out and during the summer, and the winter record needed to come out during the winter, spring for spring and fall for fall, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I have three out of the 4 of them done. So as long as it didn't matter what year I did it, like if I put off 2 years for the next one, as long as like, okay, the next one comes out during its corresponding season. So I'm glad I've stuck to that, and will continue sticking to that. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because it's for a few different reasons, it's been pretty stressful to make this last one happen on time. But it is going to happen on time. I don't know why I just said fuck it, but I just kind of said fuck it, because I find it so easy, actually, because I have so many. I mean, I think in my last 5 years, or like the back half of my 20s, and even like a little bit of the beginning half of my 20s. Like I just turned 30 like 2 months ago. I found it really easy, and I've always found it easy, which is why I even started this concept, like to categorize all my memories and like remember, like if you ask me about a specific memory in my childhood or my adolescence or high school or middle school, like I can tell you what time of the year it was and like what kind of weather it was like. Generally, I can tell you what month it was. I can tell you what season it was for sure. And I also like have certain bands and certain albums that I like do not want to listen to during specific seasons and absolutely will want to listen to during the summer. Like I'll just give you like I don't know, it's summer now, or it's about to be summer technically, but it's basically summer because of climate change. Like I I would probably never listen to the first two or three Story So Far albums during the winter. Like that makes no fucking sense for me. Those are summer albums. Shit
Yeah.
like that. And I categorize music that way, and I always have, like with the emotions that it makes me feel and the moods of the songs. I I've never been like a lyrics first listener, but I do like to get into the lyrics after the fact, after I vibe with the instrumental and the mood that it like invokes within me. So yeah, I just kind of like took that concept, and it felt so natural to me to start writing a song about this experience. And okay, it sounds I don't know, like thinking about Tundra, the winter album that came out in 2021. Like okay, I had this like really hard, tough experience that I want to channel and talk about, but not like make lyrics about. It's going to
Right.
sound desolate. It's going to sound cold. It's going to be kind of mid slow tempo. It's going to sound very like dreary and like bone chilling. And certain bands do that for me, um, you know, like Now, for example, their first
Yeah.
album or second album, Threads. That is like epitome winter album for me. Um, one of the most quintessential albums to listen to when the weather gets cold and it's like cold and
Mhm.
dreary out. Like perfect album. It's actually like top five favorite albums in general for me. Um, I learned so much about like tension and release and like delicacy and like musically creating desolation um, from just listening to that record. So like I started writing about my own kind of experiences and like just thought what that would sound like, and take that concept and apply it to each season, and that's how I've like tackled it so far. And it's gotten more interesting as it's gone on because like I was thinking of summer and winter at the start, and I was like, spring and fall. I don't know. I'm sure I could figure something out. And then, like in the past, Forever Bloom, that's the spring one. So I did have to
Mhm.
like think for a bit about what it actually felt like for me and what experiences I could channel uh, for that. And then with the autumn one, which is by process of um, elimination, the last one that comes out this year during the autumn. Um,
Mhm.
I am going to like I have like really had to dig and think, and I've come up with something that feels really nice and genuine to me, and I hope that translates.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. Like I said, it was very like it's very awesome and very impressive to hear you talk about these things with so much intent, and you saying that you can remember like what season certain events happened in your life or maybe the month is like I wish I had that memory, man.
Yeah,
That sounds good because I can barely remember like something from 2 weeks ago,
but also
but it does make.
same, like
Yeah,
same.
right.
I feel you on that. I don't remember what I had for like dinner 2 days ago or yesterday or whatever, but like this core memory that impacted me, I start to take in all this information, and it's very like in my blood. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, but it also makes sense even from like to do music that way a little bit, especially when you have obviously this is like I hate pigeonholing things at all. So saying this, I'm already annoyed with myself. But that sort of like post rock vibe that you have for Secret Gardens, but being able to throw all these different textures on. in the same way that like a lot of people, like you just said, might do with like an entire genre, right? Like I'm right there with you. I don't really listen to pop punk outside of like summer. Like for whatever reason, all of a sudden I'll be in the car and it's sunny. It's like I'll actually go throw on a Story So Far record or a Wonder Years record
Mm-hmm.
or something when like I probably haven't listened to them since last August or September or something, right?
Yeah, it's
And
weird.
that, you know, it's or like black metal for me for some reason I put on in the winter. I guess I just want to feel evil. I don't know, but like something about
Yeah.
their the corpse paint or something. I don't know, but there is like you do. I mean, in the same way that your emotions change with the weather, right? Like whether it's seasonal depression or people are just more
Yeah.
active. It's like music and art can do the same thing and come from those same places and also kind of hold a mirror to those same sort of things that you can't quite put a finger on, but everyone, if you talk to them about this in that way, would absolutely know exactly what you're talking about to some extent, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's everyone can like not a lot of people think about it, I think, because they like a lot of pop music and stuff that's kind of anti-seasonal and just whenever,
Yeah.
but I think there's a thread of like commonality that everyone can relate to with what I'm doing. Even if they may not like the genre that I'm doing it in, like
Right.
a pop
Right.
artist could approach the same concept and really make it speak to someone. But I think people do categorize things like that. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of the same way that you can view a lot of different. This isn't seasons, but it's like weather or climate. Where like I don't know when it's a gloomy, rainy day for whatever reason. I don't know if you're into horror movies at all, but like I'll always throw on, no matter how many times I've seen it, the first part of the It movies that came out in like 2017 and
mm,
2019, I think, because it starts off with like a big thunderstorm and flooding and all this kind of stuff, and it's like I don't know, the weather reminds me of that movie, and then I feel like
it's funny.
I have
I
to
haven't
watch it, even
seen
though I've seen,
those. I do like
yeah,
horror
but
movies, but
you get what I mean, though, right? Like you can have that same sort of feeling attached to weather or climate or seasons or whatever across the board. So again, makes a lot of sense. Just don't really think about it that often.
yeah, no, it's everyone has their own way. I think of like processing that, but
Yeah,
it's different for
absolutely.
everybody. This is just mine.
Yep, 100%. Going off of that, you're talking about that the autumn record comes out this year. You've put out the other three. And kind of given the intent aside from thinking about specific memories or feelings that you get from the seasons and everything you just kind of laid out in detail there. um what is your kind of songwriting process like, as general or as specific as you can get? How has it changed over the years with this project? Do you approach it guitar riffs first? Do you write with other people for any of these songs? Is it all you and a computer and a DAW and everything in between? Just kind of, what's the songwriting process sort of like for you?
Yeah, it's actually changed, and I think it will continue to change and ebb and flow. Started out as a me and a DAW for sure. In secret, I made a lot of these songs at the start in secret, just kind of letting experiences I've had and like melodies flow. It will start out with a guitar riff a good amount of times. I'll have something that'll be really like really just speaking to me that I'll fiddle around with and sometimes come to on accident more than not. So that'll happen, and then I'll be like, okay, well, what does this look like? What does that look like? And I'll tab it out in the DAW and like figure out shit. For the first two records, Tundra and Vado, I did the drums and the bass and pretty much everything. Um, Tundra had like a couple features, and I'm trying to think, like just talking about a songwriting standpoint. Yeah, those are the
Mm-hmm.
first two records. I did collaborate more. Yeah, on Tundra, there's a really awesome vocalist, Aaron Ruse, who used to be in a band called Stateside.
Mm-hmm.
She's my friend from Australia that I've been friends with for a long time. She features on a song, and there's like a spoken word part and singing, so like that was really cool to experiment with because it's a completely like non-linear song. Um, so I was having fun like expanding because that was the second record, and I was like, oh shit, let me expand a little bit and see what if vocals were on this stuff. There's also like another part that's like spoken wordy there, that another friend of mine does, and it's like it was interesting to mess around with. So there's that. I'm trying to think.
Like even get
Just
into
need
the
a
weeds
drink
there a
there really
little
quick.
bit. No, you're good. Like with Aaron or with Idola when you featured these vocalists, um, specifically on that. I know I'm going all over the place here, but since you have
No,
this
it's okay.
intentional meaning behind these records, do you help in writing like the vocals? Do you hand it off to these people, trust that they'll get the vibe of it, and just say go? Like what because it's kind of an interesting thing when you have a few songs featuring vocalists and you've got this very intentional thing that's instrumental. Otherwise, like, what's that been
You're
like,
so
and
right.
what's your approach there?
You're so right, and I think by like the first release or second release, like I didn't know what that looked like, so it was kind of scary and like uncharted territory. But I did figure it out, and now I kind of feel a little more comfortable with it. But basically, like Aaron's a super close friend, so that was the first time I really featured a vocalist on any of this. So I, with that song, if you want to get to that song specifically, I what's it called? I basically had this like spoken word part, kind of like I guess you could call it like poetry esque kind of narration type of like self narration type of part that when I wrote Tundra, I was going through some incredibly hard times. I was really, really depressed. There's a lot of not good shit happening in my life from all angles, pretty much. And I wanted to musically represent kind of just shutting down and going into your like and forcing yourself into like your happy place or somewhere you can feel peace and serenity amidst all of this like completely fucked up shit that you're going through. And that
Mm-hmm.
song, Stillness is what it's called, is the musical representation of that. uh so I actually ended up writing most of the lyrics for that one, and giving them to her, and also telling her like, hey, riff on this if you want, and go in and out and expand upon it if you feel like you should. And we did that, and it worked out perfectly because everyone's just like super awesome and easy to work with. Yeah, and I wrote like I do sing here and there. I just haven't like found the right time until now. Spoiler alert, with newer stuff that like my voice fits, like the right types of songs that my voice fits good on.
Right.
So yeah, I like told Aaron like, hey, try this melody for this, because I had a bunch of ideas. I feel like I've always been good at writing stuff, but I just can't sing everything that I write. That ended up just like, excuse me, working out perfectly with that. Then to skip to Everbloom, for the Idola song with Andrew, we got in touch. We got put in touch, and I sent him the song and I heard what he thought, and I told him, I gave him more of, just because I asked him like how he wanted to do it. Basically, I just kind of take each vocalist collaboration as its own different beast, and he said like I could totally write some stuff. Just give me a couple weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
like how do you like what are you thinking about this song? And I told him, well, this song sounds like this to me, blah 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 blah. I could try to remember what I said to him in a second. But I definitely told him like this song feels like a musical like cleansing. I think sun shower is the song, so I was like, this song feels like a sun shower musically. That's why I it's funny, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. The
No, that's
song
fine.
musically felt like a sun shower to me,
Mm-hmm.
like a perplexing beautiful mix of like rain and cold, like rain and like moody, like somberness, but with also
Mm-hmm.
like some glowing rays of beauty to me.
Yeah.
So I told him like you could emulate that, or you could talk about just general spring things, like use
Mm-hmm.
spring like metaphors or similes in the lyrics that you write. But you're also not tied to that 100%. But if you can, I think it'll fit really, really well. And you could be like kind of esoteric if you want, and like abstract. That's fine too. And then he sent me a first round of shit, and it was like near perfect. And I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. And then I just like sent him back like, oh, what if you did one melody change here? And then like, how do you feel about reapproaching this set of lyrics? And it worked out fine after that, honestly.
Well, that's cool that you're kind of able to do the approaches with that, with both, with your friend Aaron and then also with Andrew, where, you know, you can kind of give a lot more pieces, still have flexibility for the vocalist with the song we put out in Tundra, Stillness. But then when it comes to, you know, the latest one, Sun Shower, like you just said, off of Everbloom, that you're kind of able to just give a broad idea. And both, I think it works out for the concept you have, because like, even though it wasn't like you sent Andrew these, you know, these lyrics and told him specifically what to say and how to do it and all these different things, like if you're able to give the intent of the song, if they're a good vocalist and songwriter, as we know, you know, Andrew is, you would hope that they would be able to convey, you know, that's, you know, it's their job and they're doing a feature, right? Like, it's, as long as you can give the intent, it's nice to see that it can still work out well, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I could have written something too, and it might have ended up just as good or not as good or whatever, but it worked out the way it worked out. And I was like, really stoked on that. But yeah, I guess there's no book or way that I approach it. Even the new record and all the vocalists I've collaborated with is also indicative of that. Like, it's been very different also too. So yeah. And there's also instrumentalists that I've collaborated to with, like, really, like Brandon Ewing from Gold Necklace, and he used to play bass for Chon. He does a solo. Cool. He does a solo on Everbloom, and it's fucking crazy, and I cannot play it. Yeah, so shit like that, and there's just more of that on the new record, like a lot more.
Well, diving into that for a second, then we'll get into, you know, a lot like Bird stuff and just what's going forward for the band. Obviously, with the record you're putting out in autumn being one of them. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to spill the beans on something you haven't, like, you know, started doing a ton of promotion for. I'm not going to try to make you do that.
That's okay. But, I mean, you can ask whatever I want. I can skate around it if I want.
Yeah, you can always just say no and tell me to fuck off, right? But you know, you said that you are going to do some singing on this upcoming record, right? Which is kind of a first for this project, right? Like I, as you said, you haven't done that yet, and you're featuring some other vocalists. So is this one, is this one more of like a half instrumental and half, you know, songs with vocals kind of vibe? Or I guess you could just tell me, what can people expect to be different, I guess? You know?
It's going to be different. And I've said from the jump, it's going to be different. What's crazy is this album is mostly vocals.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Which is nuts. There's definitely some instrumental bangers on it, and some songs that are like half instrumental and whatnot. Like, I've approached the concept of vocals like, well, do they have to come in at the start of the song or the first verse, or can I just fucking put them in whenever I want?
Right.
So I've toyed around with that concept, because think about Caspian. Caspian has had songs where the vocals are very non-linearly approached, and they are like in the middle of the song or halfway in the song, or same thing with like Godspeed You Black Emperor, same shit. So I liked that as a concept. It felt very freeing to be like, oh, here's where the vocals should come in, and it should be like, or I only wrote like 1 or 2 or 3 good vocal parts for this song, and that's all I need to write. I'm not going to write no second verse if I don't feel like they're fire.
Right.
But some of the songs I gave to vocalists were more pop structured, and they were like, yeah, I can write first verse, second verse, poof, bam, cool, good. Oh, here's a couple choruses, and then I threw in some other stuff that's like kind of more off the beaten path, which has been fun to make those two flush together. But yeah, vocals, but definitely still not all the time like structured a normal song's structure. And if I do structure it, it's weird. It's like if I make a pop song, or I make a song pop structured, meaning it has like a couple verses, a couple choruses, whatnot. Like it's because like I think it sounds fucking great that way.
Yeah.
It's not because I like needed it. I mean, yeah, if the project's like pedigree has been any like is indicative of anything, is that I don't really care about like being this radio friendly rock band. That's never been my
Right.
thing. So, but I do. I mean, I've always liked pop music. I've always liked like pop structured stuff. Like it's been equally as good to listen to as like completely abstract instrumental like prog shit. Um, so I've just channeled both of those things now that, and I think the season of autumn, without like going into too many specifics about what the songs are about, have specifically opened up the door for me to do that. Um, just with the types of experiences that I am trying to channel and talk about, I've definitely felt like, yeah, this song could be pop structured, cool. And then like the 2 tracks after that, there will be a 7-8 minute post rock jam that's just completely
Yeah.
blinding and insane and is all instrumental. So like, it's just whatever
Yeah.
comes out for in service of the season that I'm trying to emulate.
Well, and that's what's cool about this project that you've done is like you haven't like shied away of featuring vocalists when it works for a given song, but also like since you've put out so many great instrumental tracks with it that you do what a lot of good instrumental bands do. Like one of my favorite instrumental bands is of course because I'm into metalcore and all that stuff is Animals as Leaders, right?
Yeah, they're
And
sick.
and what their drummer talked about that I just never really thought of because when I listen to instrumental music, I tend to just like listen to it and it feels like the soundtrack of whatever you're doing in life in that moment a lot of times. But he was, talking about how they always do kind of motifs throughout their songs that are sort of the quote unquote, um, you know, if you want to say like a tagline or chorus or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like in even some of the more like, off, odd time signatures or, more progressive tracks that you've had, I've noticed those sort of like, whether it's a rhythm or a given, guitar riff kind of formulated in different ways and stuff like that. Like you still, I guess what I mean is you still find a way to have the songs feel in a way that like someone that isn't into overly like progressive instrumental music would still enjoy it as much as they would a song with a vocalist on it, right? So I guess that goes to say like, you're able to tackle this too much because you know how to write a good song, and a good song is a good song no matter what like type of
Thank you.
trajectory you have for it, right? Like if it's quality, it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as it's good, right?
Thanks a lot, man. It means a lot that you picked up on that and said that, because I have always been a person that is about earworms, and earworms do not have to be like whatever, like the lamest pop hook you can think of, like
Uh-huh.
that. I mean, to me at this point in my life, that's not catchy to me anymore. Other shit is like completely catchy, and if it's totally catchy, like you can repeat it. Like that's what makes some songs pretty good. Repeating it like 3 times, like which is just enough, or like 7 times, which is like kind of overkill, is a balance that's too important to pay attention to. But yeah, I've always been an earworms kind of guy. Like I fucking love when a song has a grabbable, like tangible melodic component that you can hum to yourself, sing later, whatever it is, something that just buzzes around back and forth through your head. That, I mean, I've been dealing with that as a fan my whole life, like memorable, like parts of music that grab you, and like internalizing those, putting it through the factory of my brain and seeing what other bullshit comes out. Like, um, so yeah, I've always, like, no matter what I'm making, try to make something memorable, and have some sort of like melodic importance, whether that be like with a vocal, a rhythm, or even rhythmic importance. Which I didn't finish before, but Everbloom and the next album that's about to come out were written in a completely different way. This kind of segues also into Birds a bit. I posted some clips of new stuff in 2020 when I was working on, or sort of starting to approach what the next record would sound like. This was between Tundra and Everbloom. Like Tundra was done, and I was like mixing it, finishing it up. It wasn't released yet, and I also like had a few random ideas for the next record, thinking about like, oh, what would spring sound like? Because I think I was like, should I do fall or spring? And then I just started making spring type sounding shit. So I was like, okay, let me just try spring next. Crazily enough, when I was in that point, Joe Arrington, who is the drummer of A Lot Like Birds, found some of my shit and commented on a post of mine of me demoing out the song Skydeck, which you can hear on Everbloom. And he was like, oh, this sounds sick. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm a huge Birds fan. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, he's always been a nice guy. Me and him have like randomly chatted prior to that point. Talking about like video games and other bullshit because he's into video games too. As like you can see in my fucking Zelda room back here, definitely a big Zelda inspiration. All the music, all the Secret Garden stuff is pretty inspired by like all those music soundtracks and like games and whatnot. But yeah, he just fucking commented on my shit, and I was like, oh, well, hell yeah, thanks, man. Like, it would sound even better if you played drums on it, like, or if you like put something over this. And I think we were at a point where we were like fresh pandemic, where everyone was just like, fuck it, let me try some shit, let me do some shit that's exciting because no one's going anywhere, no one's doing anything. So eventually, like a week or two later, he laid some like a clip over down like that first part of Skydeck, and I was like, bro, what the fuck? Yo, hell yeah, dude. This is fucking crazy, bro. That's nuts. And I was like freaking out because I was like, drummer who's like he's not just some drummer dude in some band. Like this is like a masterclass musician drummer who has like excelled at his craft, like been on drum magazines, like sponsored by Zildjian, like is exceptional, creative, and like intentful with his drumming. I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Arrington's like catalog as a drummer, like Birds, Cianvar, fucking everything he's done is just like so. He's like one of my favorite drummers ever for so many reasons, which I'll continue to talk about. But like, the fact that this guy was so humble, so cool, found this random video I posted and was like down to throw something on it. Even like forgetting about what it would turn into, I was like stoked on that. I was like, fuck, man, like that was so validating. And so we just kept like keeping in touch, and he was like, I was like, I think I just was like, I have more shit like that if you want to hear. And we like ended up playing like online games together and stuff and just becoming friends. And it's been one of my favorite fucking things that has ever come to fruition in my life. And he was coming to New York for some tracking session in November of that year of 2020. And I was like, yeah, man, like I'd love to hang. And he was like, yeah, come to the studio, come hang for a day or whatnot, just because we never met in person and whatnot. And I had sent him a bunch of stuff at that point, and then we hung out in person. It was really fun. He was recording an EP for Skylar Caparici, who also plays for Idola. He's kind of in that camp. That EP's insane. I've heard a bunch of it. I can't wait till it comes out. He was recording then, and we just kind of like, I had a bunch of stuff and a bunch of ideas, and I was just like, I floated the idea to him like soft launch, but I was like, dude, like, I could come down to Nashville where you live for 2 weeks, and we could just like hole up and make a record if you want. Like, I'm down as fuck, and we could just see what happens and see where it goes. Like, I have a bunch of these little ideas that I don't want to really push them too far forward because I want to hear where you take it if I just play you some shit, because it'll make me go in a different direction. I know this about myself. It'll make me be like, wait, that's fucking cooler. Hold on. So I rode that like path, and we did that in this winter or early spring of 2021, like February, March. We did that, and like it was a fucking dream come true. I went down to Nashville. We made like pretty much 9 of the songs on Everbloom. The last one is like an acoustic song that I just wrote. And it was just like an incredibly like bonding, beautiful, like perfect experience. And also on that same session I went to in November of 2020, I met Reese, who plays for Idola and Birds bass. I met Reese, who played on that same record, and we like became friends and became friendly. And I was like, "Yo, like, do you want to try bass on this record? Because I have some bass ideas for some songs, but you're fucking insane, and it would match up with the insane, awesome shit that Joe and I like." Not to give myself a pat on the back, but like the shit Joe steered it, the direction Joe steered it in is fucking crazy, and it opened up a lot of doors with my way of making music. And it was actually the perfect opportunity to do that because the spring record, I feel, excuse me, has room for more vibrance and like color and like excitedness and like faster tempos and faster beats and whatnot. So it was like the perfect storm of things, and Reese can play along to that shit like it's easy for him because he's like 80. He runs miles around me in terms of guitar and bass knowledge. But yeah, so it was just like the perfect storm of musicians. And then so yeah, Joe did drums and wrote it with me, kind of half and half. Some stuff more one way or the other, and Reese, after all of that was tracked, played bass on the shit. And that was definitely what separated Everbloom, and that was intentional. And for this record, I had a lot more stuff that, compared to Everbloom, I had a bunch more stuff that was written by me, but still had room. Like I had the basic drums all over it, but still had room for Joe's like experimentation. And there were some songs which were more like, okay, Joe and I are going to make this similar to an Everbloom song, but with a different vibe and different season. And there were some songs that, like, I came like, hey, here's the song, here's the structure, but I want you to make the drums way cooler. And so that's how the new record kind of panned out.
But that's so you've been able to more consistently collaborate with at least Joe on both Everbloom and this latest record. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So that's really cool. That's awesome that you get to, you know, this is, your project, and yet you get to have a little bit more consistency with somebody that you view like will legitimately get, kick it up to 11, if not 12 out of 10 from what you were working on because of their musicianship, right? Like that's got to be a really cool feeling to obviously you do a lot of work with them, also kind of with the touring stuff, but that just seems like that would be a really gratifying feeling just to be able to like consistently collaborate with somebody that you respect and also can count on to do well with the music and just see the final product and be wide-eyed. I'm sure that's just got to be awesome.
It's insane. It's like truly a dream come true. Like, and I owe it all to Joe Arrington, really. Like, he has significantly changed the course of my musical career. Even forget about the last 6 months of Bird's shit, which is a very recent development. Like, he just becoming friends with him and like bonding with him and really like, going through a couple things and helping him out and like just, I don't know, like it's not just a musical thing. Like we're like personally really like good friends, and it's just been one of the most beautiful things to be able to find that even like a little later in life. I feel like a lot of people find that when they are younger and whatnot, those types of bonds. But yeah, it significantly changed the arc of my life in a great way so far. And these last 2 records that have him on it are like, really, really important and intentional, because it's funny because like I was saying, spring is more vibrant, like tends to more of those like excited, playful rhythms like that are more fun and could be perceived as more like mathy and whatnot, which I love. There's some of that on the autumn record, but it's also like a little bit more, it has like a tinge of that somber, like pensiveness that autumn can bring in. But autumn is
Uh,
also beautiful too, and there's a lot of reasons for celebration in autumn, but it's also like the end of a life cycle,
right.
which is something I touch on too on the record. So yeah, it's a huge blessing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You talked about it a bit here, and I appreciate all the time you've given me on this recording. All this stuff is fantastic, just from a musician standpoint, and really, really cool. But you brought
Thank
up
you.
the last 6 months or so is when you've kind of got you work on music over the past couple of years with Joe from A Lot Like Birds and other projects, Yanvar, all these different things, and you build this relationship. Where does it come from that they kind of give you the call or you talk to you or whatever that you end up playing live
Yeah,
with A
man,
Lot Like Birds? Where does that,
fucking
because that's,
crazy.
that's a big step up, you know what I mean? As far as like someone coming to you, like, we're not just going to work on your music that I really enjoy and want to help out with. Now I'm going to ask you to play in my in my band and do the touring with us.
Yeah, I caught wind of their reunion maybe a year or two ago. I knew it was also supposed to be a thing earlier than it was, but I think the pandemic shifted some plans, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew it was being reapproached. Like, that's all I knew. And I was just like, hey, man, like, by any stretch of Jesus Lord, if you need somebody, like, I even originally offered bass because I don't know. I think someone was like, hey, put Reese on guitar or whatever. I was just like, dude, if I can help out in any way, like, I'll be your tech. Like, I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
just, I know you guys would be starting from ground zero, sort of, or just reapproaching everything from square one. Like, I would love to help out. I'm a huge fan of the band, but not in a way where it's like creepy, but like I genuinely want you guys to succeed and do good. And
Mm-hmm.
I it's sad that the band was so special and meant so much to people like me, a lot of people like me, that it had to end and whatnot. And in whatever way, because you're my friend and you're my brother, in whatever way I could help support, like, just let me know. But I also was like, low key, like, I know how to play all the stuff. So like, let me play on the stuff if you need somebody.
Right.
So I think them three, because now with the reunion, it's Joe, Kurt Travis, and Michael Franzino. And the other members have since not rejoined the band. So with that, and they were figuring out that shit, I think they figured out the vocalist filling in for Corey Lockwood. But with guitar and bass, I think at a certain point, Michael and Kurt were kind of just like, Joe, we trust you. Like, you, yeah, like, try, see how would you figure this out? What would you do? Because I think they went back and forth. This is hearsay. I wasn't there for this
Yeah.
conversation, but I think they went back and forth with who to pick, who to get to fill in this and that. Um, but Joe, I think at a certain point, I don't know if it was him or them, but they were like, or if he was like, I got this, I know who to pick. And I I got the fucking call. It also helped that I don't know if you're familiar with Moxie Franzino's other project or not.
No, I'm not. No.
Yeah, after Birds, Michael Franzino started a new project called Moxie the Band. Completely different genre, completely different direction. Also, an incredible fucking band, incredible
Mm-hmm.
songs. Um, my girlfriend is a touring photographer and videographer and content creator and stuff, and I because I knew Joe and I think Moxie was looking for someone to go on tour with them. I threw her name into the ring, and they ended up actually becoming friends before I did, which is funny. Um, and like, when you tour, you get really close with people, and if it works out, it's like a great, beautiful thing. So that, yeah, that ended up being a thing, and so I think that's sort of like that, like, side, like, I can vouch for this person type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Put me in a good spot, and then I eventually ended up meeting. I had met Kurt before because we played some shows with Royal Coda in 2022, and Kurt knew about Secret Gardens because Kurt and Joe are pretty close. Um, and then, like, same thing with Franzino. Like, I met him in 2023, and he knew about Secret Gardens, and we had just been like friendly on social media and stuff. And so, and then Reese also actually played guitar for Kurt Travis, like his solo stuff before Birds was a thing. So it just, I just got the call one day, like when they got an official like offer for a festival, and like, okay, this is an actual show we're playing. I'm gonna give you the call. Here's what we can offer you. Do you want to do it? And I was like, where do I sign, motherfucker? Not like literally, right. But like, let's fucking go, dude.
Yeah,
because I know the songs. Like half of the battle with Birds is like you need to know the harebrainness of the structures of the songs, or like how consistent they can be in inconsistent ways. Like especially with the early stuff, the Divisi is definitely more structured in a different way, but I also love Divisi too. So that was in November. I got the call, and I've been fucking really thankful and really stoked ever since. And it's everything's. I'm not gonna comment too much on the future, but everything's looking pretty good, and I'm pretty excited for everything in the future.
Well, that's awesome, and that's a great. And like you said, so much of it is, you meet people in the music world, whether it's touring or you're working on music or whatever else. And if, as much as like being a prolific musician as you are is a great asset for when those people, it's also like that you clearly mesh well with them, which as anyone knows that's been on tour is like just as big of a battle as making sure someone's good at what they're doing on stage. Right. So all of that coalesces that you get to do this really cool thing. And that's awesome. And speaking of live shows, I know you also, that's my awesome professional segue. You also have an upcoming tour, right? That you're playing quite a bit of shows. I know at least one of the shows you have a couple of people that have been on this podcast before with Sales Ahead and things of that nature, so kind of
with Secret Gardens.
Yep. With Secret Gardens. So what, are you set? How many, do you know off the top? I just looked at it and I just, of course, pulled it off my screen here, but how many shows are you doing? Are you excited for that tour? And, dude, where are some of the places you're hitting?
I'm stoked to play a bunch of Secret Gardens songs again, because I've been working on mixing the next record. We haven't really played many shows this year at all. We played like one show in January. Grind. Yeah. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 shows. It's like a 2-weeker run. Kind of going like from here to like out to Chicago, down to like Atlanta, and then back up, kind of like all those spots in between. I'm stoked. We're about to head out. We leave next Friday, I think. It's been really fun to. I mean, it's always been really fun to play all these songs live. Last summer, we did a Everbloom like full album play show in our hometown. It was fucking awesome. Such a good show. And I wanted to do something this year. I know I was going to be super fucking busy with making the next record, but I was like, if I can pair up with a sick band and we can make something work for like 2 weeks, I'll be happy. I don't need to do that much more until the record comes out. And it looks good to be busy and doing stuff, because as you start out in a band, you have to grind, and you want to look good for the industry people that play. But it's not just because it looks good. It's also like people have been like, yo, when are you coming to this city? When are you coming to that city? And I'm like stoked every time I hear about it. So if I get enough of the right leeway, I can make it happen, which is the awesome band we're touring with, Sincerely. We're like co-headlining with them. They're fucking so cool. And I caught wind of them last year, and I just ended up like hitting them up and be like, do you guys like, are you touring this year? Do you want to do something together? Like, let's figure this out. And they've been really awesome to work with. And I can't wait to like meet them and play a bunch of shows with them real soon. So we're hitting Pittsburgh, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland / Akron, Indianapolis, Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, Richmond, Washington, D.C., Boston, Philly, and our hometown of New York. That starts awesome. Next Friday. It's the last 2 weeks of June. If you are listening to this, come out to a show near you. It's going to be a good ass time. and we have really awesome locals supporting each show, and some of the awesome people who have been on this podcast too, like with Sales Ahead and Pulses and shit. Like, I'm so happy we were able to like hook it up and like make really cool shows happen, and really thank them for wanting to play with us.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'll have to see if I'm, you're coming to Chicago on the 15th.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
what is that,
Saturday,
Saturday? It's really
dude. Do
cool.
you work
Yeah, yeah,
Saturdays
awesome.
or whatnot?
Not sometimes, but I can make it work. I'm gonna figure it out. That'll be awesome. Um,
Yeah, we're
uh,
subterranean. So if
yeah,
you can make
it's a
it
great
work
venue.
on next.
Have you played at the Sub T before in Chicago or anything like that?
No, last time we were in Chicago, we played the vegan pizza place. What's it called?
Oh,
Fuck.
I can't even
It's
remember the name.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember the name of. I haven't been to that place in quite a bit,
Fuck.
but I know what you're talking about. I just can't
Kitchen
think of the name off the top.
71, Kitchen 17, Kitchen 17.
That sounds something like, yeah, yeah. I think you're right
Dude, it
now.
was great. They fed us great ass food, and every band we
Mhm.
played with was crazy good. It was like randomly like an awesome show. Well, I mean, Chicago actually always fucking goes hard.
It's
So
pretty hard to have a
yeah, the
bad
15th.
show on a at a good date in Chicago. It tends to. We're pretty spoiled with the music scene here for sure.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Next Saturday, the 15th, come through. We're playing with I don't know if you know When We Was Kids and The Skies Are Shifting. They're both really sick bands.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when we was kids, I actually had hit them up a while back to be on here, and I never got back to them. So it's a good reminder for me to to message them. Um, but
Hey, come say
no,
hey to
thanks.
them at the show.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's what I should actually do. Duh. All right. Well, thanks for going over all this, Greg. This is really cool. Really hope the tour goes well. It's great to hear that everything from the upcoming record, which I'm super stoked to check out. Um, and the the performing with a lot like birds and everything in between. Last two
Mm-hmm.
questions I'll ask you before we kind of sign off here is just to plug where people
Sure.
can find you, your music, if you've got, your merch, whatever in between. And then also every episode, I play a song at the end that the guest gets to pick. So obviously, you can pick whatever song from your catalog. I would go with Secret Gardens, but pick a
Yeah.
song to play at the end of it as well.
Yeah. So you can find me at secret GRDNS, which is like Secret Gardens, but the word gardens doesn't have vowels.
Mhm.
That's my attempt at the getting a good username, because all of the regular Secret Gardens were taken. So secret at secret GRDNS. It's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, TikTok, same shit. Spotify, you just type in Secret Gardens, it should pop up, or
Mhm.
Secret Gardens Everbloom, and that'll pop up. You'll see it. And what song would you want to hear? It's tough because it's like, do I pick the song with vocals that everybody likes, or do I pick a song without vocals that I
If you
fucking
want my
is like
input,
my
I always
favorite?
think it's good to pick your favorite track that isn't necessarily the most popular one, because if people are checking out a full hour plus of this, they
True.
don't need to necessarily, they're going to check out the big song on their own to begin with anyway. So maybe
Awesome.
what I always say is like pick the
Good
one that
call.
you like that you wish more people would check out, I guess, is always the way
Yes.
I like to tell people. Yeah.
My favorite Secret Garden song that we've released so far is called Cathedral Trees. It's such a fucking fun song, and I like have just this overjoyous smile whenever I listen to it. Like, and it's like, if we don't play it at a show, I feel really weird because it's so much fun, and it's just like it's perfect to me. So yeah, go check out Cathedral Trees and play that one.
Yeah, we'll play Cathedral Trees at the end of this for the recording. I do have to just say this is one thing I meant to bring up earlier, so I'm glad you said that. The 3-track run of Cathedral Trees, Idaho Willow, and Coastal Cadence. Those are my 3 favorite tracks I think you've put out. I went back when I
Hell
listened through
yeah.
the record this morning, and I was like, I'm going to go back, and I didn't have time to listen to the whole record again, so I just made sure to go back and listen to those 3 again before we came on the recording, because those songs are just fucking great. So agreed.
Fuck yeah,
That's
man. I was
that's one of your
very
best songs for
intentional.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very intentional about that and that run and like the whole run of everything, because I mix the albums and I
Okay.
like sequence them all together, which is just an fucking insane task. But yeah, it's very intentional and very like springy feeling and all flowing into each other, which is like I really tried to make that fucking sick.
And it worked out fantastic. So on that note, we are going to play Cathedral Trees at the end of this from Secret Gardens and the Powerless Podcast. Greg, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to anyone listening. Appreciate you, love you. Come out to a show or just say hey on social media.
100%. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
See ya.